Good morning, New View Trust family. Here we are with another fantastic Tuesday webinar. Today we are going to be talking about diversifying with self-storage with our very special guests, Scott Meyers and Scott Dahin. Disclaimer: New View Trust serves as your custodian for alternative assets. We do not provide legal, tax, or investment advice, nor do we sell investments, but we do custody IRAs, ESAs, HSAs, and solo 401ks that hold alternative assets. So, what is a self directed IRA? A self directed IRA is an IRA in which the IRA owner directs all of the assets inside of the plan. But self direction is just a marketing term. All IRA accounts can be self directed. I'm going to turn it over to Scott. And Scott, please introduce yourself and get started with today's class. We are super excited to hear from you guys.
Hey, Tabitha, so good to see you again. Thanks for having us once again. Scott Meyers here, and my partner, Scott Dahin. Scott, would you like to say a few things about ourselves and the company?
Yes, thanks for having us, everybody. So we have been at this in self-storage and private equity for over the last 15 plus years, and as TriCore over the past 5 plus years. Excited to give you some information about self-storage and about self-directed IRAs and how they meet together.
Okay, so indeed, what we are going to be chatting about today is why self-storage has been so recession-resistant. We never say it is recession-proof, but it has outperformed all other asset classes, bar none, not only during the pandemic, but as we head into the economic climate that we're in right now, and that is what we're here to talk about. But before we do that, I'd like to turn it back over to Scott Dahin to talk a little bit more about our executive team.
Great, thank you. Yes, so there are 4 partners here. Myself, Scott Dahin, the CEO. I handle a lot of the government affairs, public affairs, as well as really inside of a lot of different departments here. Thoroughly involved in the acquisitions. And so we are a well-rounded company where we do fund management, asset management, as well as property management, all in storage. And you'll see on the line as well as Scott Meyers, my CIO here. And then we have Ken Lang, the CFO. We have Larry Murphy, the COO. We've been in business together for over 5 years as TriCore. Again, we pride ourselves as running a 3-legged school of fund administration, really understanding how to buy properties, when to buy them, and how to accumulate them into a portfolio. And we've been at this for decades, but we'll go into more detail on the team beyond us, the partners here.
Well, thank you, Scott. And yes, our investment experience goes beyond the 5 years that we formed TriCore, the actual fund itself, but working together in different capacities and also in the industry for, again, about 20 plus years. And so to date, we have collectively worked with over 520 investment partners. We've raised over 67 million in equity for those folks that have invested alongside of us. Again, many of those folks are coming from New View as well. Current assets under management, we surpassed 42.9 million with a couple of recent transactions, and total assets under management of 65 million plus. Approaching now closer to 28,000 self-storage units nationwide that we have bought, either purchased, developed, acquired, managed, and then in some cases we have sold some of those facilities off. But that is the amount of units that we've had under our purview. And total square feet approaching 4,500,000 plus that we have had experience in over the years, and projects altogether approaching 80 plus now. And so we have been around the block a few times. Again, this is our specialty, and this is what we absolutely love, and this is all that we do. So why self-storage, and why now? Well, we've seen that the pandemic created a huge surge in demand, and this was very similar to another type of recession, if you will, or another type of a period of downturn in the economy, which is always a good for self-storage. And what that did is it allowed the folks to be able to move, give them the freedom to move once they came home, and employers recognized that people could actually work from home and be productive, which created a demand for storage. Also, 10,000 baby boomers are retiring daily. They're downsizing. They're moving into smaller houses, or then they're moving into assisted living facilities, and then moving on, and their estates are being settled, and their kids are then putting their stuff into storage, which is creating a huge demand. Millennials, we were nervous in our industry. At least the industry was cautiously developing facilities and looking as to where the demand was going to come from because they were known as minimalists. But we found that the millennials and the generations that are coming behind them now actually are storing 40% more than the actual boomers because they have smaller houses and they have multiple places to live because they like to have experiences, and that necessitates a need for storage as well. And then we saw during the pandemic that RVs were sold out because people couldn't fly to vacations. Same thing with boats. And so we made a small, not even a pivot, I would say, but Scott and I took a look at the market, and we determined that there was a need for storing all these boats and these RVs. And so when we began to search and develop facilities, we made sure that we allotted for and sought out places, facilities where we had ample room to be able to add boat and RV parking as well. And so what we've seen as a result of not only the pandemic, but really coming through for the past 4 years, with the boom that has come outside of that, we say self-storage is, again, very recession resilient and inflation resilient. When times are good, people buy more stuff and they store more stuff. When we have a downturn in the economy, well, then people downsize and they also then store more stuff. And when you find that, if you're looking for self-storage and you come upon a website where they say that they are completely full and no vacancy, well, it's not just a person behind the counter trying to get you to rent the last unit that is in. You better reserve it now. And what we found is that there is a huge amount of pent-up demand for self-storage all across this country, and we can't keep up with the development and the demand to be able to meet it. And so that's not just us saying this. All you have to do is take a look across the landscape, which may be one of the reasons why you're here. All you have to do is look at the Wall Street Journal, any other publication on commercial real estate or sectors of the economy, or just Google self-storage and why it's so hot right now, and you'll run across several articles, but the stats behind it as to why this industry and this asset class is doing so well. And so why do I put this slide up? This is from 2012, and that is because we've seen over and over and over again, and again, this is the reason why Scott and I are so excited about this asset class. And we don't get excited about pandemics, we don't get excited about downturns in the economy, but we've seen over and over again with the Great Recession being the result of a huge uptick in self-storage, and once again, outperforming all of the other REITs, the real estate investment trusts, which some of you may be investing in or looking at, but self-storage has outpaced them all, and we're likely to do that again. You can look to Forbes magazine and other reasons why investors are running to self-storage. If you recognize that guy that wrote that article, well, we're going to be going over just that information just now. And so we like the business from an operations standpoint, which as our passive investors, which are folks like yourself that are looking to invest in it, well, you should like it for the same reasons as well. And that's because the reasons why it is so profitable and is a business sector that is more desirable is because compared to other forms of rental real estate, everybody says they love rental real estate, either actively or passively, if it weren't for the tenants and the toilets and the trash. And that's literally, those are the reasons why we love this business model. It's a simple, predictable business model that, if run very, very well with a good operator and syndicators and folks that have been at it for a while, it doesn't guarantee success, but it puts you in a really good position compared to the other asset classes. And that's because in the other asset classes, we have to chase people for money. And then if they decide to move out or abandon, we have damages on top of that. But self-storage is different than all other asset classes in that we have lien laws that protect us, the investors, the owners, the operators, versus habitational laws, which protect people because of evictions and eviction laws. And so we don't have to adhere to any of those. Our laws are different. And it works like this. Step number one, if somebody doesn't pay, we remove their gate code. Step number two, we put a lock on their unit. There's a place in the door lock for 2 locks, and they won't be able to get into their unit. And then number three is if they don't come in and make good and pay their back rent and late fees within our 60-day or 90-day time limit, depending upon what state we're located in, well, then we have the ability to hold an auction and sell their stuff off and recoup our back rent and our late fees. And so that alone is worth the price of admission for investing in self-storage. At least we found for us it was, because we get paid 100% of the time. It doesn't mean that we get 100% of our payment 100% of the time, but it puts ourselves in a position where we are the judge and the jury, and we don't have to go through eviction court or tenant and toilet court. We get to handle these. They're not evictions because nobody is living there, but we get to handle the lien process ourselves. And so we get paid without having to go to court, which is the way it should be. We don't run a charitable, we don't run our business as a charity. We have a charitable arm, which we'll talk about in a moment, but our main business is not. And so when we hold these auctions on site, we can do it one of two ways, is just that. We can hold them on site with our managers, or hire companies, third-party companies to come in, which is what I would recommend anybody do if they're doing it on an active state. Or we can advertise these units online and handle it that way without having to parade people through the site, our facility, and schedule it. And anytime when somebody is behind, and we have the ability, when we have the ability to open their unit and take a picture, we can put the unit online. And then obviously, if you've ever been attended to or heard about how auctions work, well, emotions take over, and the more people that bid on them, the higher it goes, which is obviously better for us. Another reason why we love self-storage is because for active investors like ourselves who are seeking funding from lenders and private equity partners like yourselves, well, it helps that self-storage has the lowest loan default rate and the lowest cumulative loss rate compared to all other asset classes in real estate. And so all you have to do is take a look at what both Scott and I were involved in, which was a multifamily, and not to pick on that asset class, but if you see here, from 1.1 to 3.35 on cumulative loss, and 6.34 to over 21% in terms of cumulative loan default rates, we decided that it was a little, we would head over to this business model because it was going to ensure our success at a greater pace than it would working in a multifamily. But more importantly, when it comes to getting funding for our projects, when the banks look at the lowest loan loss and default rate, well, they want to give loans to this asset class because it is safe, more profitable, more cash flow. And that is the reason why we have the lower loan loss and default rate. And then on top of that, compared to the other asset classes that we were investing in, we have the ability to add additional income streams. We could sell locks, boxes, and moving supplies by having a little retail store on site. We can offer record storage and shredding services, billboards and cell phone towers, temperature control, and wine storage. We can sell or offer, we don't sell, we're not licensed to, but we can offer renter's insurance for folks to be able to protect their goods while they're storing it at the facility. We can put vending machines on site because people get thirsty and they get hungry while they're moving things in and out. For our folks that are more along the lines of a business renter that are using this to pack and ship businesses from, say, an Amazon drop shipper or an eBay drop shipper, or just somebody who has a small business that has warehousing and inventory, well, then we can offer the eBay services, our managers on site, and to be able to sell their items off for them if they get behind, or if there's just a reason why they want to and they don't have the time for it as well. Pack and ship, then adding that cost on top of it. We've identified over 40 different profit centers that we can add to a self-storage facility. These are just a handful of the more popular ones. The most popular being truck rental services. If you've driven by a self-storage facility, you'll typically see the U-Haul trucks out front, or Penske trucks, or any number of the companies that offer truck rental services. And that also provides not only the income for us, but it offers storage services because usually when those folks are moving in or out of somewhere, they need storage. And so it operates as a lead generation source for us as well. Now, another reason why we love the asset class and why it does so well compared to the others is that it is not labor intensive. Many of the other asset classes in real estate, they have an operating business on top of it, which is what we have as well. However, when folks are looking for a storage unit, they're looking for something that will fit their stuff in it. So whether they need a 10 by 10 or a 5 by 10 or a 15 by 20, the amount of stuff dictates what size they need. They like to have it close to home. Outside of that, they're not shopping around like they would for an apartment or a house. They're not looking at school systems. They're not looking at neighborhoods. They're not looking at anything else. So if we tick the boxes for the main things that people are interested in when it comes to storing their items at a storage facility, is it close to them? Can I access it? Is it safe? Is it clean? And do I have the ability to be able to rent a unit or reserve a unit because I don't have a lot of time? Self-storage is a commodity. And when people need it, they need it. And they want to be able to check a box to be able to rent a unit, to put their stuff in it and move on. It's not a decision that requires a lot of thought or a lot of emotion, or bringing the spouse in to make sure that we made a decision. And so for that reason, we've made it very simple and very easy for folks to be able to store from us. And that is by utilizing technology, not only on our websites, but also in our sites as well at the facility level. Many of our facilities have the ability to rent a unit on site without ever having to come in contact with a person. And the industry has adopted the technology that's been out there for a number of years, whereas if we choose not to, we don't have to have a manager that is operating at the facility at all. Everything can be done with the kiosk, and people can move in and move out with a cell phone. And anytime they have a question, they can contact our call center. So therefore, we have a one-to-many approach to customer service, meaning one client can talk to many folks that are at a call center versus a one-to-one ratio where a manager may be sitting in a facility waiting for a customer to come in. And so we've just taken advantage of many of the efficiencies out there with regards to in the industry that has really just grabbed a hold of the technology that is out there within the economy, period, including the means and ways for people to get into their facility very easily by utilizing their phone with motion and thermal and motion security sensors inside of our facilities. We mandate renters insurance so that we don't have any debates or challenges with our managers that are on site and our clients. Their goods are handled by the renters insurance program. It's mandatory that you have it, and if not, purchased through our provider, then you have to show proof of your own so that we don't have a back and forth should anything be come into question with regards to any water issues or anything else, which reduces again any HR issues on our side. And also, if somebody does become behind in their rent, once they pay their rent, in the old days, they would have to pay the manager and walk out into the facility, and then they would have to physically take that lock off. Whereas now it's automatic, and the software handles it. In some cases, in some of our facilities, we have locks on the back of the door, which is electronic, so that immediately when somebody pays their rent, if they were behind, it unlocks that door for them and takes them out of that lien status, so that they're not in trouble any longer. And again, we lean heavily on technology at all avenues within the industry, as well as our businesses themselves, making it very easy and seamless as possible for people to be able to reserve a unit online and to rent a unit online, and also to pay rent and then move out. And so there's a number of different software programs and companies that we utilize to be able to make this happen in a very easy fashion for our clients as well. And so that's a background just to get everybody up to speed as to what's happening with self-storage, and why it is the asset class that not only that we love, but that our investors love as well. But it's important, that when you're looking at folks like us at TriCore Funds, and Scott and myself, if you've run across one of our webinars, you've run across us online, or just known us because we've been around NewView for a while. If you're looking at other sponsors in other asset classes, or maybe even self-storage, although, gosh, why would you go to anybody else in self-storage? However, we recognize that there are things that you should look at. And again, NewView does a very good job of coaching and teaching folks on these webinars yourselves, things to look for when you're evaluating sponsors and folks to work with. One of those being a company structure. First of all, do they have a company structure, or is it just an individual who just popped up onto the scene and started to raise capital for self-storage? But how are they structured? What does it look like when it comes to the actual organization and the operating agreement? And how do they manage and handle the company themselves? Property management is also a stronger piece that we have chosen to take a hold of and bring back in-house. And Scott, why don't you talk a little bit about the reasons why that we became vertically integrated and moved our property management back in-house versus using third-party companies?
Yeah, it's part of it's control, and that's a good thing. To be able to control the expenses is one thing that you'll find with hiring a third party management company. In their agreement, it basically says we're going to manage the income, we're going to manage the ads and the marketing of the property, and we're going to hire a site manager to sit there and collect rents. And but they're not going to be pushing income. They're not going to be, and if they are, they're going to be pushing it with tens or hundreds of other properties at a time. We like the idea of really understanding each property. So each property is its own animal, kind of like in multifamily as well. And a lot of it is how we buy and what we buy. So we like the repeatability of a larger property with a full-time site manager. Again, it's the time on task of somebody making sure that property is loved for and cared for. Just like anything, if you love and care for it, it's probably going to end up in a better position. And that's what we think financially, as well as, when we're continuing to upgrade the properties, we take the nasty old, properties that need some work and put a lot of effort into it. And I think you have to select the right property management company. If you're out purchasing Class A facilities, it might be easier for a third-party management company. But if you're really looking at value add, growth type of strategies, it's really important to have property management in-house.
And at the end of the day, the third party property management companies, their goal is to raise revenues, and that means that comes from us. And our goal is to have property management run as efficiently as possible, but it should be a pass through if we can. And the only way to make it a pass through is to bring it back in house. And so that is something that you should be looking at when you are entertaining other sponsors and other syndicators, because they can't control their costs if they don't have it in house, similar to the way that we run it. Due diligence, how and what type of due diligence is being done, and are they sharing that with you? So as you receive an offering memorandum or get access to their portal, are they sharing all of the due diligence? And are there any red flags? Did a feasibility study come back maybe not so favorable, or anything else that you as an active investor would take a look at and say, yeah, well, I think I would dig into that a little bit further, or ask questions of. And if none of that is made available to you with regards to due diligence, then ask for it. And then also that may be another red flag at the very least. Do they have attorneys? And we have multiple attorneys. We have contract law attorneys that are looking at our purchase agreements. We have SEC attorneys that monitor everything that we do in this realm with self-directed IRAs and the individuals that are investing with those and setting up an offering. This is a security that we offer with our investors to be able to come alongside of us. And then also from an operations standpoint, we also procedurally and from an operations standpoint have attorneys that are very familiar with the laws and how to operate the business if we have any questions with regards to how we are doing things from the opposite side of the house. Insurance. Do these sponsors, and this is a very key question, key, no pun intended, key question is, do they offer key man life insurance? If there is a one guy, or in our case with TriCore, there's 4 of us, we have key man life insurance policies so that if something happens to the lead person, Scott Dahin is the CEO, or myself, or the entire team happens to be out for dinner and we all get hit by the proverbial bus, what happens, and how are you all covered? Well, with key man life insurance policy, all of our investors are covered to the degree at which to the projected returns that we have put into any of our offerings. If we should pass before this investment goes to the wayside naturally, then everybody is covered. And so making sure that everybody is covered is very key for any company that is raising capital and partnering alongside of folks like yourselves. Do they have a third-party accounting firm? Is it all internal? There's nothing wrong with having an internal accounting firm, but asking some questions about where the review is. And do they have audits, which is a very important and in a piece that we've learned several years ago that is very key for not only reporting purposes to our investors, but also makes life a lot easier during tax time as well. And the property management is also a little different than asset management. Property management means looking at the property itself. Asset management means that somebody is managing the managers of the site and is maximizing, especially in a fund scenario where there's multiple facilities, is making sure that we are dotting I's, crossing T's, and just driving revenue at all costs and reducing expenses at all costs. And then we do have internal asset management folks that are looking at our facilities, not only individually, but portfolio-wide at TriCore as well. The guarantors, who are guaranteeing these loans? Is it the folks, the C-suite, if you will, the folks like within our company that you just saw, and in that case that we do, or are they bringing in other folks that have to guarantee their loans? And that also could be something, a question to ask, or a red flag if they're bringing in outside guarantors on their projects. What is the equity and debt structure? And Scott, do you want to take a piece or talk a little bit about our leverage structure versus our equity and some of the guardrails that we put in place?
Yes. So I think I'll start with debt. It's one of the most important pieces to make sure that we're not over leveraging or over burdening a property with debt. So and there's been times where this changes. A lot of times we change with the markets as banks collectively go up in a loan to cost, loan to value. We might tick up. We are very conservative in the loan to value, loan to cost that we take on, making sure that there's plenty of cash above the debt payment to make sure that the property can withstand a recession. We do really, really well. And so between the conservatism we have, as well as how well storage does in the markets, that's why the default rates are so low. So it's really important to not choose adjustable rate mortgages. That's something we also stick to is only fixed interest rate mortgages, unless there's a really short amount of time and it's very advantageous. Those are coming around in swaps, but very leery of creative financing that comes and goes. We all know defaults on those creative financing has been high in the back end of a depression or a recession. We've seen quite a few of them, or a couple of them that we've been through in our experience. And then the equity side, we've raised, well over 50 million there, and very conservative with how we're raising that and the message that we're sending out, making sure that we're able to follow through and under promise and over perform. And that's why most of our investors are repeat investors and come back to fold those profits back into our company. And we're very excited for the future and thankful for the following we've got.
Yeah, very, very tempting for sponsors to go out and get more bank debt because it's less expensive than bringing in equity partners. But also those partners, those lenders, if things should go south in the economy, they're not the partners that we want to have holding more of our assets out themselves. And also tenure is a very important piece. How long? There's a whole lot of folks out there you've probably seen that are offering perhaps some really high IRRs and some astronomical returns, and appear to have done very well, but that's only been within the past 5 years or 6 years when we've had this huge bull run in real estate and had a huge wind in their sail in their back. And there's a whole lot of folks that have raised money, but have they exited and have they been through a recession? So more than anything, it's there was a statement that was made when Scott and I were at a large private equity investor event, and we were one of the large managers of the hedge funds stated, he said, I would never work with a sponsor or somebody like us. I would never follow a general into battle if he didn't walk with a limp. And so, in other words, not working with anybody who hasn't been through a recession, doesn't have a little bit of scar tissue to learn, because all it does is allow us to see a little further down the road than some of the folks that just haven't been at this for a little while. So always good to align yourself with folks that have been in the business for a while and have at least been through one recession, if not two or three. We employ consultants every step of the way in our projects, doing feasibility studies, appraisals, as well as from time to time we do have other industry consultants that we may bring in just to assess if there's maybe a challenge in a facility before we buy it that we just want to get another third-party set of eyes on. And so if there are other folks out there, if you're looking at sponsors that don't use any consultants, that should also raise a red flag, because we all do. It doesn't matter. Scott and I, we've been at this for 20 plus years, and we still employ the use of consultants. Tiger Woods uses a coach, and we are humble enough to go out and get help when we need it. Also, an investor relations team. It's important to work with folks and sponsors that have somebody that's going to hold your hand and walk you through. Again, NewView is fantastic to work with, and that is why we're so thankful for this partnership. Because when we have investors that want to invest with our projects, we know that we don't have to chase NewView around like we've had to do with other custodians and other self-directed IRA folks, and that's just a fact. And so to work with not only good companies, folks that have custodial accounts in the right places like NewView, but for us on our end, and any sponsor that you're looking at to be able to have an investor relations team to help you to navigate that is key. And then obviously track record. How well is this goes hand in hand with that tenure, as we just talked about, but how well has this sponsor done over the years? And have they ever lost any money from an investor? Have they had any capital calls? And have they exited successfully? Those are all questions to ask. Thankfully for us, I don't want to say thankfully, it's because of the approach that we've taken to the industry. We've never lost a dime of investors' capital, and we've never had a capital call. And that's because it's built into our offering memorandums that we don't have capital calls. And so we need to raise enough money and borrow enough money to make sure that we see these projects through until they make it to full occupancy and exit within the timeframes in which we have stated in our offering memorandums. And if not, that is on us, but there will be no capital calls with any of our investors that come alongside of us. And so, again, that's why we have had so many folks that have invested alongside of us and been able to raise equity, because we have that track record of success. We have been set up to succeed, and we make it easy and seamless for our investors to basically say yes and to be able to work with us over the years. And so what do we focus on primarily? We're a shop that takes a look at, depending upon where the market is and the opportunities that are out there. We have a very active acquisitions team and development team. We buy existing facilities that are value add. We develop facilities from the ground up. And we also are now in the middle of a fund that is not in the middle. We're towards the end of a fund in which we are buying industrial buildings and other types of buildings, structures, facilities, grocery stores that we can then convert to self-storage. And so Scott's head over that. And so, Scott, you want to take a minute to talk a little bit about the acquisition side and what we're targeting these days?
Yep. I think the fancy terminology is adaptive reuse. You'll hear out there a lot. And there's been quite a few other companies or industries that have done this. Between the condo transforming into apartments or apartments into condos. We've all seen those. But we found a niche there. Gosh, I think we did our first conversion about 7 years ago, 7-8 years ago, if not before that, where we took empty buildings, anywhere from a grocery store, a furniture store, industrial buildings, whether 1-story, 2-story, just looking at for really good real estate, fundamental Sam Zell buys, right? Where the underlying real estate is a good play, good signage, good visibility. But we've also bought some back in industrial parks. So the basis, the buy is really all in the basis and making sure you find solid real estate plays, and then it's really making sure that you get like back to the consultants, right, and making sure you come up with enough really important information when it comes to the saturation levels, the demographics, the growth in the area, the zoning. It's on and on with the boxes you have to check when it comes to finding the right facility or the right empty box to build out. But really exciting, the kind of niche within storage is a place where we've found a lot of value, and the returns are pretty extraordinary, where you can get in earlier to a project or a piece of property because the land's there, the building's there, everything's hooked up, ready to go. And a lot of times we'll find properties when we just purchased where the roof was redone, the ACs were redone, the plumbing, that kind of thing. So there's a lot out there still. It's needle in a haystack finding these great investments, but they are out there. Just finding the right size and the right markets is the important piece.
And that's what we have been doing. Target markets in Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Texas, Tennessee, and Georgia, and also other high population employment growth rates. And so we do have a framework in which we are looking at facilities. We will do some one-off portfolios, if you will. We're not into buying properties in multiple states, just a single asset, a single property, because it doesn't make any sense it doesn't give us the ability to manage those effectively, and also not looking to in areas that aren't growing, that have high crime rates. In other words, we're just not looking for these properties that we hope that we can turn around. Only the solid bets with the solid parameters and solid demographics and markets that we know are going to be strong, both for ourselves and for our investors in the future. And then the value creation of adding U-Haul agencies and dealerships on top of them, the ancillary income streams, as we mentioned before, managing the revenue very aggressively. And we are not, we won't avoid raising rates and coming into a facility in which they are behind the market in terms of rates, and making sure that those folks are and that facility is getting up to market rate, which is where a lot of value is created in our projects as well. And it also helps, and I'm going to tip my hat to our staff and our team. At the heart of what we do is giving back. And we build houses in Mexico. We built 39 houses to date over the years since we've been investing in self-storage. And we take our teams, our staff, and some of our investment partners along with us for an all-expense paid, short-term, family-friendly mission trip, just to see what it's like to be able to give back and how self-storage can do that. And so I would continue to, I implore you to continue to research self-storage as to how and why it is outperforming all the other asset classes. It's just been a very mini masterclass on why you should be investing in self-storage or other reasons to add it to your self-storage portfolio. But as we've seen over the years, it has outperformed all the other asset classes as inflation has cropped up. Self-storage has continued to do well, outpacing all other asset classes at the top of the heap compared to industrial, healthcare, multifamily, retail. And as a matter of fact, $100,000 invested in self-storage in 1994 outperformed a multifamily by $2,215,650 and outperformed multifamily by $2,215,650 and the S&P by 3,494,000 if you would invest in back then. And so that is, again, the reasons why we love the asset class. And over the years that we've been investing alongside of our equity partners like yourselves, we returned, even though the industry average is 16.85%, our historical track record has been 36%. Over the past 16 years that we have been investing in self-storage and bringing on equity partners as well. And again, no capital calls, never losing a dime of investors' money. Some projects obviously better than others, but that is a running average that we are very proud of because we brought our management in-house. And we have a good acquisitions team led by Scott and a good operations team led by Larry, and Ken watching over the finances, which has allowed us to be able to get to that place. So if you are interested in learning a little bit more about the TriCore storage funds and opportunities that we have open, you can certainly you can email info@passivestorageinvesting.com. And most likely, Julie, one of the folks that is in our investor relations department, will be happy to answer any questions and give you access to any of the projects that we have coming up, either open and or coming up. All right. So with that, Tabitha, I believe I'm going to turn it back over to you now for any other questions that have come up while we were chatting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great what you guys are doing. It sounds like you guys have thought of everything. What stuck with me the most was that you made everything electronic so people can rent and not have to deal with a real person. I feel like today's day and age, that's what everything's about. Doing everything online, not actually having to deal with real people. Not including the capital call in the investment. That's pretty awesome because I know sometimes clients of ours, they do have capital calls and it's a hustle and bustle trying to get money transferred from other accounts, assets liquidated, and into their account here so they can do the additional capital call as well as the life insurance policy that you guys have. It's really awesome. Amy, what questions have come in for Scott and Scott?
So the first question was, how easy is it to manage a self-storage facility compared to other types of real estate?
Well, Scott, you were the one who was in charge of bringing that in-house. I'll let you take that one.
I think we went over, some of the major ones, right? So we don't have evictions, we don't have tenants, we have contracts to lease a space, so our clean out compared to like an apartment complex, right? You're going to go in there with steam cleaners, you're going to go in there with cleaning companies. It's going to be weeks potentially to clean them out. We take a broom and head in there for a couple minutes and clean it up real good. So turning over the tenants is so much easier. We run a 70,000 square foot facility with one person. So the management of the facility itself, now there's a workforce behind that, making sure that all the bills are paid, making sure that that we're navigating as a business and as a property owner, all that comes with the tax increases, with insurance going up, with employees quitting. So there's the same, a lot of the same issues that property management or asset management runs into. But as comparatively to apartments and other commercial real estate, we have a much easier time in evicting, which we don't have to, as well as the lien process, which we control. And really, there's not another type of property out there where the owner controls that lien process, which is awesome.
Great. And then, are there opportunities to sell to larger operators or REITs, or will you have to hold long term for significant gains?
Yeah, we look right to the market and what's happening in the industry. Just to throw out a couple big ones in 2022, which was the purchase of Simply Self Storage, and Public Storage bought it for about $6 billion, I believe. Huge consolidation happening. We've seen, since we've been in the business about 20 years, we've seen almost 12 to 13% of the industry a change. And really, I think that's in the last 10 years. Before that, it was single digits. over a span of 10 years. So it's really done a lot in the industry of consolidation from these smaller portfolios being purchased up. And I say small, some of these small portfolios are, 50 to 150 million. In this industry, we have quite a few larger players. So there's about 10 of them, really 6 that control the majority of the space in that real estate investment trust or publicly traded companies.
Great. And we have one more question. I know you guys mentioned it a little bit earlier, but what trends are influencing the growth of the self-storage industry?
Wow, quite a few. There are, as we mentioned, the baby boomers are still retiring. 10,000 plus are retiring each day, and they are downsizing. The actual nature of folks that are now moving, we become a more transient culture yet again, and where people are moving, and moving necessitates a need for storage. We see many small businesses being started, and we see a lot of reshoring of industries that were going overseas. Now there's a lot of that maker space, and also a distribution that is coming back to the U.S. and self-storage plays a key part in that, up to and including even the last mile. Everybody talks about the last mile in logistics, and that last mile means the Amazon folks that still need distribution and storage in some of those smaller areas, and that is a lot of that is done also on the backs of small businesses that are operating out of our facilities as well. So at the individual level, it is still folks that are moving, that are buying new houses, they're downsizing, or they're buying houses for the first time. Small businesses that are using it more than ever, and then just the ongoing nature of our culture that is just becoming even more transient. All those are leading to just record numbers of demand for storage.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for your wisdom. We really appreciated having you guys on our class today. If you guys are interested in learning more, please feel free to reach out to me. I can get you in contact with Scott, or you could reach out directly to Scott or Scott. Please scan our QR code if you're looking to have a meeting with us.